We thank you for joining us for this special edition of KVUE News Midday. I'm Ashley Goodo.
And I'm Tony Plahetsky.
Today, Austin Senior Police Officer Jorge Pastore will be laid to rest. We will bring you his funeral in full this morning. About 90 minutes ago, the APD Honor Guard escorted Officer Pastore's casket out of a SWAT vehicle and onto the stage for the service.
And Ashley, Officer Pastore was killed in the line of duty last Saturday morning. You're looking at video from the scene of that early morning shooting on Saturday. Police say the shooter killed two other people who we have learned were his mother and brother. Officer Pastore was killed in the incident. A second officer also was shot. That officer was treated and released from the hospital. Senior Officer Pastore joined the Austin Police Department in January 2020. He served in the Austin community in a variety of ways. He was an active team member of the Honor Guard, the SWAT Gold Team, and the SRT. Officer Pastore is survived by his wife, his two stepsons, his parents, and his two sisters, Ashley.
Tony, his procession started in West Austin this morning at the Weed Corley Fish Funeral Home. It traveled through the city, passing by Austin Police Headquarters before ending at the KVUE Amphitheater. The funeral is going to happen at the Germania Insurance Amphitheater at the Circuit of the Americas tonight. You can see there more video of that procession. KVUE's Matt Fernandez was along the procession route this morning. He joins us now with more on that. Matt.
Ashley and Tony, very emotional day outside of Austin Police Headquarters. The memorial for Senior Officer Pastore right here. And earlier, officers and the community lined the frontage street in front of APD Headquarters as the procession made its way through here. Community members coming out, they were holding signs, very emotional. I had the chance to speak with a wife of an APD officer. She came out with her three kids. She started tearing up, very emotional as that procession came through. We also spoke with Lieutenant. Here's what they had to say about the procession.
I just wanted to show my kids the impact that it has on the community and how and the respect that we have for the officers.
Today's about honoring Officer Pastore and the sacrifice he made last week. Went into a very dangerous situation, ultimately sacrificing his life for other people.
Several law enforcement agencies throughout Central Texas took part in the procession earlier this morning. Very emotional once again, and Officer Pastore is survived by his wife and two stepchildren. Back to you.
Thank you, Matt. Now, Officer Pastore's funeral is set to start at 11 o'clock this morning. The viewing, Tony, was set to start at 9:30, but they were running just a little bit behind.
Ashley, thousands of people are expected to attend this service. And one thing that is so striking, that is a custom for police officer funerals, not just in Austin, but across the country, is that law enforcement officers from not only Texas, but across the nation descend, as they have, onto Austin and into Austin for today's funeral. It is expected to be, according to Austin police organizers who have spent the week actually preparing for today's event, it is expected to draw a record number of people. We're talking 5,000 to 6,000, not only attendees, but among those attendees, law enforcement officers from across the state and nation.
All right, which is part of the reason why they are decided to have it at the amphitheater at KVUE. You can see there on your screen a live look inside the amphitheater where the funeral funeral is going to happen. The service is going to happen. Visitation still happening now. If you can see, if we could take that as full, if we could take this shot from inside of the amphitheater full there, then you will be able to get an even closer view. You can see that it is an open casket as of right now, and they are again viewing the body. A long line, frankly, of people wanting to take time out to look and say their final goodbyes to Officer Pastore.
And Ashley, also in that crowd are not only friends and family of Officer Pastore, but as is customary, there are also a number of local, state, and even federal officials who are attending this visitation visitation and the memorial service that again is set to begin any minute now as they conclude visitation. But a number of elected officials we know that on the program to speak is Austin Mayor Kirk Watson. Ashley, I want to tell you that Kirk Watson was one of the earliest city officials to receive notification, that grim notification before dawn Saturday morning. He personally went to the hospital to be with the family of Officer Pastore and also the family of the second officer who, fortunately, we now know has been released from the hospital and is recovering at home. One of the things that we also know that is so adding to the emotion, Ashley, particularly in the law enforcement community, is the fact that Officer Pastore was a SWAT team member. And as a SWAT team member, those officers face even greater danger. They are often the ones to go into the most volatile situations, possibly confronting other people who they know is armed. And also, as part of being a SWAT team member, those officers train extensively in ways that other officers and other units do not. So there is a true brotherhood and sisterhood, a real kinship among SWAT team members.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Tony, thousands of people from across the country expected to be here today. And that's partly because this is the first time an APD officer has died after being shot in the line of duty in more than a decade.
KVUE's Bob Buckaloo shares stories of other APD officers who lost their lives when an assailant pulled the trigger.
We apologize for that. We are having some technical difficulties, but we can talk a little bit about those. Most recently was in 2012, and that was Officer Jaime Patron, who was killed after responding to a situation of a shooter inside a Walmart.
Happened in the middle of the night. He actually, the initial report was that someone may be shoplifting and acting erratically in the aisle of that store. Officer Padron responded and attempted to make contact with the shooter, who was identified as Brandon Daniel. Brandon Daniel then opened fire on Officer Padron and killed him actually right there in the Walmart. Brandon Daniel was convicted of capital murder in the death of Jaime Padron. He was sentenced to death. Brandon Daniel several years ago died while incarcerated in a Texas prison. It is important to note in this case, as we have been, the shooter in this incident in which Officer Pastore was killed was shot and killed by Austin police officers as part of this firefight that happened in the pre-dawn hours of Saturday.
And let's talk about really what happened on Saturday. Police got a call in the early morning hours from a young woman who said she was being stabbed and that the person in the home had other people in the home that they were attacking too.
Exactly, and that led to a very swift police response, a level 1, if you will, and that means that officers descended on this house, this South Austin house, which is near Westgate Boulevard, with lights and sirens. Because officers deemed this an emergency, Ashley, they attempted to go inside the home and make contact.
Because potential victims were in the home.
Absolutely, and it is also worth noting that as they were arriving at the scene, a woman was outside the home. She had escaped and reported being stabbed. And so because of what they told her, they knew this was an emergency situation. At that point, those frontline patrol officers received gunfire, Ashley. They were pushed back. And at that point, this became a SWAT team mobilization. And so those SWAT team members were summoned to this home. They attempted then, again, because of the ongoing emergency, and not just an emergency, but people in danger inside. They then reattempted to enter the home, and that is when they got into, as I mentioned, this exchange of gunfire with the shooter, and Officer Pastore was killed as part of that.
Yeah. Again, as we mentioned, this is the first time in more than a decade that an Austin police officer has been shot and killed in the line of duty. We now have that story from KVUE's Bob Buckaloo about the other officers who have lost their lives.
Surveillance video from April 2012, a Walmart at I-35 in Palmer Lane in Austin. A man enters the store and is seen stumbling and dropping things. The manager suspects he's a shoplifter and calls the police. When the Austin police officer approaches the man, he runs. The officer tackles him. During the scuffle, the suspect pulls out a gun and fires. Senior Officer Jaime Padron, a popular and well-liked 3-year veteran of APD, is dead. Former Police Chief Art Acevedo.
He was special. He was quick to smile. He was a guy that I don't remember ever hearing a cross word from him.
The killer was a software engineer with no criminal record, Brandon Daniel. A jury found Daniel guilty of capital murder and sentenced him to death by lethal injection. Officer Padron's former wife faced the killer after the verdict was read.
This letter is from Olivia. She's 8 now. Dear bad guy, my dad was important and he meant so much to me, and he was funny. He was an amazing guy. Why did you kill him?
But before he was to be executed, Daniel was found dead in his prison cell on death row. Officials said foul play likely was not the cause. For many who lived in Austin in the 1970s, it was a reminder of the death of senior police officer Ralph Ablanedo. David Lee Powell, high on drugs, shot Officer Ablanedo with an AK-47 during a routine traffic stop. At his murder trial, Powell was found guilty and sent to Texas death row. His appeals lasted decades, resulting in 3 different trials, found guilty each time. Powell had drawn supporters who claimed he was a changed man. Powell said he shouldn't have to die 32 years after his crime.
No apology I could give would be powerful enough to express my regret for that.
APD officers gathered near the state prison when Powell was executed on June 15, 2010. And now, again, another APD officer is killed in the line of duty. Soon another funeral, another procession of honor by the officers' brothers and sisters in blue, and another family who lost someone they loved. Bob Buckaloo, KVUE News.
Truly a hard time, Tony, for our entire Austin community.
For our entire Austin community, for law enforcement as a whole. Ashley, as we know, in addition to Officer Pastore's death, APD lost one of its members also over the weekend unexpectedly, and a third recently retired officer who left the force over the summer, who was well known and well loved within the ranks of APD, also died over the weekend in a Leander car crash. And so in addition to today's funeral, there will be other funerals in coming days that will also draw a large Austin Police Department response. Ashley, in addition to Officer Pastore and the other officers who Bob described as being shot and killed in the line of duty, we also want to note that other Austin police officers have died in the line of duty. Although those were not shooting deaths, we have lost several police officers over the past 2 decades that I have been here, and car collisions that were considered line of duty deaths. And Ashley, in addition to that, there are a handful or so of officers who contracted COVID-19 during the pandemic and died as a result of that. And it was deemed that if those first responders contracted COVID-19, that it had to be assumed that they contracted it as part of their duties.
Yeah, in the line of duty, and they are considered in the line of duty dust because of their interactions with the public in such a time where there was so much unknown, and we knew that first responders still had to be right there at the forefront of this. You can see there on your screen a live look inside the Germania Insurance Amphitheater at the Circuit of the Americas, where the visitation is extended for Officer Pastore's funeral. It was set to start, the actual service was set to start at 11, but they are running a bit behind because, again, thousands of people expected to be there today to pay their final respects to Officer Pastore. You know, it's certainly also worth noting, Tony, that in this particular incident, he is not the only person who was killed that day. The shooter is believed to have also killed his mother and brother. After officers retreated to treat Officer Pastore, when they made it back into the home, they did find those victims deceased in the house, dead in the house.
So it was a grim morning, Ashley, in that 4 people were killed as part of this, including the gunman. Authorities are still investigating all of the circumstances surrounding this shooting. But Ashley, we can see there, as you mentioned, a number of public safety officials, a number of community members, a number of family members and friends of Officer Pastore. Again, if you just look at that crowd size, I was being told by organizers that they were expecting anywhere from 5,500, maybe upwards to 6,000, 6,500 law enforcement officers from not only across the state and across the nation. And if you look at some of those vehicles during the procession that we were broadcasting live here on KVUE earlier this morning, some of those police vehicles were, in fact, from across the state, had driven to Austin yesterday, spent the night to be part of the remembrance and part of honoring Officer Pastore this morning.
Yeah, and again, you can see, and we're not exactly sure if that's the honor guard that is now back on the stage as they are preparing, it would appear, Tony, to close the casket. Watching to see if that indeed is what is happening at this point. You can see there's another group, though, of officers there on the right going to pay their respects. And so as we mentioned, Tony, just a few moments ago, 2 other people we know were killed in this incident. 63-year-old Aman El-Nimr Nassar and 32-year-old Rod Nassar were also killed during this.
KVUE's Isabella Basco talked with one of their neighbors.
Reginald Volgason still remembers when the Nassar family moved in about 2 years after him, forging a friendship with the patriarch Mohammed Nassar, who was not home when the shooting happened.
We were on the homeowner association together. We used to go and check the properties, make sure everything about it is in, Also, I remember one time I had to go to the doctor and he took me and bring me back home. He waited for me, yes. That's how close we were.
What happened over the weekend?
This has been a very tragic day, very tragic incident for all involved.
Left Volgason in shock. This all happened early Saturday morning on Bernoulli Drive in South Austin when police got a 911 call from someone who said she had been stabbed. They learned 2 people inside the home were injured. When police arrived and tried to go inside to help the victims, police say the suspect, 35-year-old Ahmad Nassar, shot at them. Officers retreated and the SWAT team was called in. When the SWAT team entered, police say Nassar shot at them and officers returned fire. Senior Officer Jorge Pastore died and one of his fellow officers was hurt. 2 apparent victims of Ahmad Nassar were found dead, 63-year-old Iman El-Nimr Nassar and 32-year-old Rod Nassar. The suspect also died.
My wife couldn't take it, she was so devastated by it.
Volgason says his friend Mohammed was traveling when the shooting happened and returned home when he found out about the deaths of his family members.
I saw him at the funeral. He was devastated.
As the city of Austin prepares for Officer Pastore's funeral on Friday morning, Volgason is asking other Austinites to keep their hearts open for the other victims.
You don't judge people without even knowing them.
Again, that was KVUE's Isabella Basco reporting for us.
And Ashley, as we await for the funeral service to start really any minute now, in addition to the mayor on the program to speak, Interim Police Chief Robin Henderson, who you actually saw in Isabella's package, she has been serving as Interim Police Chief over the past couple of months after the departure of Police Chief Joseph Chacon. She also was at the hospital, one of the very first city officials to arrive at the hospital Saturday morning as news of Officer Pastore's death and injuries and death began making their way across the city. She was there with his family, with his grieving family, also at the scene later that day as well. Certainly, as any police chief will tell you, this is a very difficult time, not only for the entire department, but also for the leadership of that department to try to help move them through what is obviously a very difficult time. Keep in mind that while many of Officer Pastore's fellow officers are attending today's service, there's still a number of officers, a number of his friends and colleagues who remain on the street as this is occurring, as this is unfolding. And so they don't have the opportunity to, in this way, at this time, pay their respects.
And that's also where we start to see neighboring departments really step in to help, some of them volunteering and coming to help Austin so that more police officers within APD can help. This is where you see DPS stepping in and helping out with the city so that the officers can take the time. And again, Tony, to your point, a hard time for the department, not only because of the loss of Officer Pastore and, you know, the concern that officers must feel about the other officer who was injured in all this, but the two unexpected deaths of those other police officers that happened so close in a time frame to this.
Yeah, and it's my understanding that funerals are also scheduled for Saturday and also for early next week. And Ashley, even more broadly, in addition to the deaths of these officers, Officer Christopher Taylor also has been on trial in a murder case. And so the department has also been closely watching that as well, that case, that trial resulting in a hung jury. But at the same time, another thing that the department has been grappling with this week. And
Taylor, while suspended, is present. We saw him earlier come into the amphitheater to pay his respects. This is some video from earlier this morning where we saw really hundreds of people lining the procession route to pay their respects to Officer Pastore, as you know, he was taken really through the city, passing APD headquarters, passing the state capitol, from West Austin, traveling all through downtown over to the Circuit of the Americas, where his services will be had before he is laid to rest.
And you know, Ashley, one thing that is just so striking to me as we watch this video is how quiet it is. You don't hear people talking, you don't see people talking. You see them being at the height of reverence in terms of showing their respect for Officer Pastore. Of course, that appears to be certainly a SWAT vehicle. That is definitely noteworthy because Officer Pastore was a member of the SWAT team.
And that is where you know, what he was in, where his casket was being carried. And you can really see, you know, his own members of the SWAT. That's so hard to see, Tony, them riding alongside that SWAT vehicle as they take him on his final call.
Absolutely. And in terms of what we also are expecting, Ashley, this morning at the funeral service are a number of his friends and colleagues who will be giving eulogies for Officer Pastore. And then, Ashley, following the service inside that auditorium will be the age-old tradition that will be performed after the service itself outside. And in terms of the traditions, those include certainly the playing of the bagpipes, Amazing Grace. That is something that is a tradition when a police officer loses chooses his or her life. There will also be the presentation of an American flag to the widow. That is something we see that happens at police officer funerals. And then Ashley, the thing that I think always causes people to choke up and to have chills, and that is the final 42, they call it, which is the end of watch call over the radio.
Yeah, that is always, as someone who has covered many of these funerals, more than I certainly would like to recount,
Yeah.
Tony, that is the part that I think is the hardest.
Yes.
To compose yourself, especially, as a journalist, but
Yeah.
also the police officers who were there, the first responders who were there, and the family, is to hear that happen. It is very emotional.
It absolutely is, but I know that is one of the things that, and I also want to point this out, as we have, Officer Pastore was a member of the Honor Guard.
Right.
So the people who were going to be doing that on his behalf this morning are the people who he would stand with.
Who he has served with. He's
with.
one of them in
Yes.
more ways than one.
100%. And so just the depth of grief is really profound. And I think that we can see that and feel that from the screen, from this video we've been watching.
We're hearing now that the service is expected to start anywhere 3 to 5 minutes now. It was set to start at 11 o'clock this morning, but so many people have come out to pay their final respects. Visitation was extended. We also want to note that the procession arrived at the amphitheater a little bit later than was expected. And so things are running just a little bit behind schedule as we are, of course, bringing you the full funeral service, full coverage for Senior Officer Jorge Pastore, who was killed last Saturday in the line of duty.
And when we talk about the scope and size of the procession, officers, firefighters, medics, Ashley, they were all out there well before dawn this morning, lining up to participate in that procession. And so, given the size, that is the reason that it was, in fact, taking longer to move through the city. You can see there the pictures, the images from Officer Pastore's life that we are showing now on the screen.
Yeah, the slideshow that people are being able to watch, just to show how full of life and how much he enjoyed life with his family and with the people that he loved so much, and a community that is forever grateful and forever indebted to a man who gave his life to stop someone who was attacking others.
And of course, during the funeral service this morning, our community is going to get to know Officer Pastore better, that we are going to hear his story, a story that we have certainly learned about and heard about in recent days, but those who knew him best are going to be sharing his life and details of his life, and really, Ashley, his legacy. He will go down as an Austin police officer who died in the line of duty, something that, as we have said, is infrequent in our community, but certainly something that will go down in Austin police history, grim, sad history, but an important part of this community as well.
And I don't know if people caught that. We just saw a firefighting photo. Again, a life of service. A life of service is what Senior Officer Pastore lived. And so it is, again, such a significant and heavy loss for our entire community to be at this point where we are preparing to memorialize him, have his funeral service, and lay him to rest. It's looking as though the line for the visitation, people being able to view the body and pay their final respects, it looks as though that line is wrapping up. I know it is a little hard to see, but that's the image you see there. That's a live look inside the Germania Insurance Amphitheater at the Circuit of the Americas, where we are expecting the Honor Guard to close the casket. In fact, they have closed the casket now. They are draping the American flag over the casket, and it appears that the service is preparing to start. I'm trying to learn, is there sound? Are we hearing anything from the service just yet or not yet?
Yeah, maybe I hear some music in the background. Yeah, there. Yeah,
but yeah, you can see visitation has ended. The casket is now closed. And we are just anticipating the start of the actual funeral service. Tony, I know you know the program.
Yeah.
What we are going to start with.
Yeah, I was actually just going to point out that this service will largely be read, Ashley, by APD Chaplain Rick Randall. People who are familiar with APD certainly know Chaplain Rick Randall. He has been part of the department either in a full-time or part-time position, or actually as a volunteer chaplain for more than 2 decades now. He is a fixture within the department who has helped guide and lead and shepherded, if you will, through other crises that have hit over the past 2 decades. But he will be helping lead the funeral this morning through the reading of prayer and scripture. He will also provide Ashley a message, a sermon, if you will, during the service this morning. There will also be songs that we hear, songs that are performed, including one called Officer Down, that is also often customarily performed at funeral services for law enforcement officers.
I'm trying to listen to see if we're hearing. The plan is to open with the song Heroes, trying to see if that indeed is the song that is being played now. As those members of the Honor Guard stand with their comrade, their fallen comrade, as they are preparing to start that funeral service. Again, if you're just now joining us, we thank you for joining us for this special edition of KVUE News Midday, where we are bringing you full coverage of the funeral service for senior Austin police officer Jorge Pastore, who was killed in the line of duty responding to a SWAT situation last Saturday.
It happened, Ashley, in the early morning hours of Saturday morning. Police officers descended on a home in South Austin off Westgate Boulevard after being summoned there by a woman who called 911 screaming for help, reporting that she and family members were being stabbed. We know that frontline officers arrived at the scene, but then it led to a SWAT mobilization. Officer Pastore attempted with other officers to enter that home to take down the gunman. That's when there was a firefight and Officer Pastore was shot and killed.
Yeah, they were met with gunfire. We want to note another officer was also shot during that attack. We have since learned that that officer treated at the hospital but has since been released and is recovering.
Exactly. And so again, we're going to be hearing from Austin Mayor Kirk Watson, Interim Police Chief Robin Henderson, as well as friends of Officer Pastore, who will provide eulogies. Again, Ashley, really letting us all know as a community more about Officer Pastore as a man, as a police officer, someone who gave his life, made the ultimate sacrifice in the line of duty for our community.
And just to tell you a little bit about Officer Pastore, he joined the Austin Police Department in January of 2020. He served our community in a variety of ways. He was an active member of APD's Honor Guard, as well as the SWAT team and SRT. He is survived by his wife, 2 stepsons, his parents, and 2 sisters. And we can see people taking the stage now, which we would believe to be his family members who are
appears to be
arriving on, being escorted, and they will take their seats on the stage for the service that is set to start really any moment now. You can see as they are bringing the family in and onto the stage. And as Tony mentioned, we're expected to hear from a number of people today, including several of his own friends and family. And we're actually going to hear some family comments from someone in the family who is going to speak about, we know him because we know of his service and his dedication to the Austin community. But during the slideshow where we were seeing pictures from his life skiing and out at the beach and together with his wife, just the life that Officer Pastore lived. And so being able to pull that curtain back and really get to know who he was as a person is going to be, I think, very important for the members of our community in terms of us being able to really understand the loss.
Understand and I think appreciate,
right?
Which is an important part of what we're doing here today as well. I could see, Ashley, just to the right of your screen there, a number of dignitaries and elected leaders. I did see Mayor Kirk Watson, who, as I have mentioned, is going to be speaking at today's service as well, and was at the hospital in the earliest hours of Saturday to be with Officer Pastore's family after receiving this horrible news.
And Tony, a life taken from us so soon. I mean, Officer Pastore was 38 years old. And, you know, certainly you think about all the life left that he would have had to live, but died in service to his community, understood that community and the safety of our community was first and foremost. And that's what was paramount to him. And to lose his life in such a way at, I would say, the young age of 38, you know, certainly speaks volumes, and you feel for his wife and his two stepsons.
And again, I think, Ashley, what makes this even harder is the fact that he died while trying to help people who were in immediate grave danger. This was not something that police initiated on their own.
Right.
This was a 911. This was not a raid
right,
situation.
Right.
This is something that police were called by a terrified woman screaming on the phone,
right.
A victim who had been stabbed. And so that is what led officers to mobilize and to descend onto this home along Bernoulli Drive is the name of the street in South Austin.
It's sounding like the ceremony is starting with the playing of the song Heroes. We want to listen in to that now.
I wish I could swim like dolphins can swim, though nothing will keep us together. We can beat them forever and ever. How we can be heroes just for one day. How we can be heroes just for one day. I will be king, and you will be queen. and the guns shout above our heads, and we kiss as though nothing could fall. And the shame was on the other side. Oh, we can beat them forever and ever, and we can be heroes just for one day.
Good morning, grace and peace to you. From He Is Gone by David Harkins. You can shed tears that He is gone, or you can smile because He has lived. You can close your eyes and pray that He will come back, or you can open your eyes and see all that He has left. Your heart can be empty because you can't see Him, or you can be full of the love that you shared. You can turn your back on tomorrow and live yesterday, or you can be happy for tomorrow because of yesterday. You can cherish Him and only that He is gone, or you can cherish His memory and let it live on. You can cry and close your mind, be empty and turn your back, or you can do what He would want. Smile, open your eyes, love, and go on. Please join me for a moment of silence. You're invited to reflect in whatever way is consistent with your own spiritual tradition, to reflect on George, the impact his life had on you, and the gratitude you feel for having known him. Could we pause? On Saturday, November 11th, 2023, George Ignacio Pastore passed away doing what he loved. He was only 38. He was an amazing man whose purpose in life was to serve and to protect others. He was a true patriot, and his family says it was only fitting that the day of his passing was Veterans Day. He was born in Glendale, California, and moved to Florida as a child, where he discovered his passion for martial arts and began teaching at the age of 16. He and his wife later opened Champions for Life, where he taught and mentored hundreds of children throughout the course of his life, most of whom consider him to be a real-life superhero and continue to aspire to be just like Mr. George. In Florida, he spent 10 years in the fire service as a firefighter, paramedic, and lieutenant. His passion for helping others and his desire to challenge himself led him to the Austin Police Department, where he became a police officer and ultimately fulfilled his dream of earning a position on the SWAT team. Out of everything he did in his career, George was most proud of his service in the Honor Guard, both for the Seminole Tribe of Florida and for the APD. He was fiercely loyal and protective of many people who were lucky enough to be loved by him. George was blessed to be married to the love of his life, Kim. They enjoyed traveling, music, staying active, and their dogs, Champ and Bella. But most of all, quiet time together was what they cherished most. He was a supportive and caring stepfather to Connor and Trevor, and was so proud of the men they have become. It was important to George to elevate, motivate, and support everyone he came in contact with, and to encourage them to be the best versions of themselves. He loved to make people laugh and always put others first. He was a truly humble warrior who championed other people's dreams, goals, and accomplishments. Those who loved him have lost the person they could always depend on to support and to love them unconditionally. We have lost an amazing human being whose entire existence was spent serving others and making their lives both better and safer. George is survived by his loving wife, Kim, his stepchildren, Connor, Trevor, and Taylor, his mother Lourdes, his father Jorge and wife Jessica, their 3 children, his beloved sisters Tatiana, her husband Juan Miguel, and Noheli, as well as many aunts, uncles, and cousins that loved him dearly. At this time, I'd like to invite up Kirk Watson, Mayor of the City of Austin.
Ms. Pastore, Officer Pastore's family, on behalf of our city and all of us who rely on brave people, and we all do count on heroic police officers, please know that all of us grieve with you. We all mourn, we lift you up, embrace you, and we thank you. We thank you for sharing this selfless community guardian that's been lost. This is horrible. The sadness is overwhelming, and the loss shakes our understanding. Officer Jorge Pastore was our guardian. He was our protector, a defender of our community. This man was a shield against fear and harm, wrongdoing, and danger. He was a police officer, and we ask so very much. It's difficult, almost impossible, to wrap our minds around what happened to someone who truly, passionately loved being a cop, loved serving in the role of our guardian, shared his joy for doing it. He was trained as a paramedic. For 10 years, he was a firefighter. And of course, he was a police officer. He was the definition of, he had the heart and the spirit of a first responder. Yeah, he was always responding first, but also he put everyone else first. Throughout his career, George chose time and again to be there for people when they are most in need. He taught the young people who needed him. He offered care and compassion to people in medical crisis, saved lives and homes as a firefighter, and as a SWAT officer, he moved toward gunfire to protect someone else. I believe he put himself there because he loved us, the people he chose to serve. George loved us, loved those he didn't know, but he didn't need to know us individually to love us enough and to have the integrity to run toward danger. He wasn't one to sit and wait. He wanted to be part of SWAT from the time he joined APD. Of course, he was the first one in. Officer Pastore had a motto, a life mantra. In fact, he inked it onto his skin, proclaiming, "Protect my brothers, everyone goes home." He didn't go home. He did his job with gusto and bravery so we can all feel safer in our homes. But he didn't go home. We can never repay him. To all of you who are in APD or serving as police officers, protecting us, we want you to be safe. Officer Pastore said he was there to protect his brothers and sisters. His words are our prayer for all of you. Everyone goes home. He didn't go home. our guardian didn't go home. Ms. Pastore and all of his family, you live with the void that creates in your home. He had Austin's back. Austin has your back. God bless you. God bless him. And may God bless and protect all of you who serve us in this way.
This time I'd like to invite up Chief Robin Henderson, Austin Police Department, for remarks.
Mayor Kirk Watson, Interim City Manager Jesus Garza, Interim Assistant City Manager Bruce Mills, and distinguished guests here in attendance today. I stand before you, brokenhearted, but honored to have the privilege to know, work with, and work for Officer George Pastore, number 9097. Tax 66. Husband, father, son, brother, uncle, friend, officer, hero. Senior Police Officer George Pastore began his career with the Austin Police Department on June 24th, 2019, with the 141st Cadet Class, and was commissioned as a police officer on January 31st, 2020. Pastore, who we commonly refer to him as, served our Austin community in a variety of different capacities, starting in South Central Austin, Henry Sector, first on night shift, and then moving to evening shift. He then most recently transferred to George evenings. While also serving as an active member of the Honor Guard, SWAT Gold Team, Special Response Team, and Counter Assault Strike Team. Officer Pastore was all in. While many of us here actually knew Officer Pastore, there are some of you here that didn't. However, it is because of the ultimate sacrifice Pastore made as a law enforcement officer in the city of Austin is why you find yourselves here today. And for that, I thank you. Thank you for making the journey today to honor Officer Pastore. I would like to recognize the Seminole Tribe Fire Rescue from Florida that is in attendance here today. Prior to joining APD, Pastore worked with the Seminole Tribe Fire and Rescue as firefighter and paramedic. We recognize that you have lost a brother too. But please know, you have gained an Austin Police Department family, an Austin Fire Department family, and an Austin Travis County EMS family forever. Thank you for being here. As we all come together as one family, both sworn and civilian, I cannot tell you how much pride this brings me to look out and see each one of your faces. However, the circumstance that has brought us here is one that we never imagined or ever wanted. Every time one of our brothers and sisters in blue are killed in the line of duty, it impacts us all. Thank you for being here. My first memory of meeting Pastore was at the East Sub in Show Up when he was on the Henry 300s. Vibrant, happy, energetic. One thing that stood out and caught my eye about Pastore was the sheer amount of gear that he had on his outer vest carrier, and then just as much gear on his duty belt. Naturally, my first thought was this new officer had equipped himself with every weapon possible to patrol the streets, and thinking to myself that all that fancy gear will only last until the first hot days of summer. But as I looked closer, what Pastore actually loaded himself down with was a menagerie of first aid and medical gear. Intrigued, I made the mistake of asking Pastore what was up with all that medical gear, and instantly the expression on his face changed to that of instructional intensity. I then received an in-depth explanation of each piece of medical gear he was carrying and what type of injury it was for. Perplexed, I asked, "Where did you learn all this?" And that's when he told me he was a paramedic and firefighter in Florida. As we were short on time, I did not have an opportunity to learn about Pastore, what had brought Pastore to the Austin Police Department. But you are likely to hear about that today from one of the other speakers. I left that conversation not remembering any of the 47 medical techniques Pastore had just shown me in 10 minutes, but overjoyed at the extensive level he had prepared himself, not to take somebody's life, but to save someone's life, which he did several times. It was from that meeting that I felt like every time I turned around, there was Pastore. His dedication to our department, our community, and his teammates was second to none. None. Pastore was always all in. Pastore exemplified leadership, teamwork, inclusion, selflessness, passion, and resiliency. As stated, Pastore served with several different teams in various capacities, and I would like to take a minute to highlight some of those areas. Prior to joining APD, Pastore had helped form an honor guard with the department in Florida, and it was obvious he was very passionate about it. Upon completion of cadet class, as soon as he was eligible, he joined the Austin Police Department Honor Guard. His attention to detail in the uniform and his focus on excellence in delivering the highest honors to the fallen were second to none. He was adamant about wearing a tie that he had actually tied, not the clip-on one, with his honor guard uniform, and he took immense pride in how he looked in that uniform and focused on every detail. He was impeccable in his appearance. From our Special Response Team, SRT, Pastore was an integral member of the APD Special Response Team. Pastore attended nearly every quarterly training and deployment we had to offer. His attitude and positive nature was contagious. And which someone could look up to as an example of an exemplary member of the team. He would light up the room whenever he walked in. He always made it a point to go around and shake everyone's hand. He would routinely remind you that he was glad to see you as he had a big smile on his face. He was genuine about everything he did and wanted to do as much as he could. We on the SRT cadre would always fight to have him at our events because he was a natural leader. Pastore was a part of so many other units, and we were always jealous when he wasn't with us. We didn't like to share him. He will be greatly missed as a member of the Sierra 2 Force, but will never be forgotten. Rest easy, brother. We'll take it from here. On behalf of the Austin Police Department Counter Assault Strike Team cast, we would like to take a moment to honor the Pastore family by paying tribute to an irreplaceable member of both your family and ours. We could no doubt fill this place with countless stories of how Pastore impacted our APD family. However, we would like to reserve a small portion of this tribute to highlight the broader impact of Pastore's incredible contributions and how they benefit our community as a whole. Pastore was a steadfast member of CAST. Pastore found an opportunity within our organization to seek solutions in intimidating and appalling situations. In our past, law enforcement, EMS, and firefighters had worked separately, each agency responsible for their own duties. Perhaps we could credit Pastore's background as a fighter fire and a paramedic with his ability to see past these discipline boundaries. One of the most obvious examples of this connections made by Officer Pastore can be seen by the many grieving faces of our Austin Travis County EMS and Austin Fire Partners. Each of these faces carries a wave of emotions and memories of how Officer Pastore's life impacted them in such an incredible way. And I apologize, I keep sniffling. I'm trying to hold it together, y'all. Historically, condolences from partner agencies have been, I'm sorry for your loss. Officer Pastore's personality and life of service have eliminated that detachment. We now find ourselves sharing in each other's loss. We no longer draw distinctions or boundaries between disciplines when one of us suffers loss. It is the same calling to protect the communities that we serve that now binds us to the hurt with the loss of Pastore. Even in death, Pastore continues to bring friends, agencies, families, and communities together. The bonds he built will continue to grow. Thank you for all of those who allowed me to speak on your behalf today. I'm honored to have an opportunity to do so. I do want everyone here to please know that even in the midst of the unique challenges of our department and what the state that we find ourselves in, Pastore never wavered. His jovial intensity to serve, lead, educate, and protect was resolute. The same can be said for just about every officer that is here today and working for the Austin Police Department. We are all in. Officer Pastore was always all in. Pastore was first in. The monumental sacrifice Pastore made for his brothers and sisters in APD and his partner agencies and his community is without question. As we are eternally grateful for the sacrifice Officer Pastore made, in posthumous George Pastore, number 9097, is being awarded the Medal of Valor for displaying exceptional bravery and courageous action, risking life or serious bodily injury while in the performance of duty. In addition to a Purple Heart for his death, resulting from a suspect's actions in the line of duty under honorable circumstances with valor. Thank you. Kim, Connor, Trevor, Lourdes, George Sr., Tatiana, Noelle Lee, thank you so much for sharing George with us. Each of you are now adopted into a huge law enforcement family, fire family, and DMS family, one that will stand beside you and support you forever. Kim, I hope you know how much Pastore loved you, loved his job, and how much he truly contributed to our agency, others, and the Austin community. We are forever thankful to have been a part of his life. As I close, I must thank and need to thank our EMS TAC medics and Del Seton medical staff for their extreme efforts to save Pastore's life. It afforded our SWAT team, his shift mates, his DTAC officers, and many other officers, including myself, an opportunity to be there in Pastore's last moments with us. And for that, we are eternally grateful. To Honor Guard, Peer Support, Circuit of the Americas, network of our APD family members and first responders who have helped in caring for and honoring Pastore today, thank you. To the 141st Cadet Class, DTAC, SWAT, and our brothers and sisters of the Austin Police Department. Thank you for your overwhelming support of the Pastore's family during this very challenging time. Each of you have been all in. George Pastore, TAC 66, thank you for making the ultimate sacrifice for our community and for us. Thank you for always being all in. But most importantly, thank you for being Pastore, first in. I am incredibly proud of you. We all love you, and we will never forget you. Keep smiling, Officer Pastore. Rest easy, TAC 66, and we'll take it from here.
We're watching live coverage of the funeral service for senior Austin police officer Jorge Pastore, who was killed in the line of duty last Saturday morning.
Ashley, such a heavy moments happening out at the funeral service for Officer Jorge Pastore. And we want to mention that we've been calling him Jorge Pastore because that is the name that Austin Police provided to us.
That's the traditional spelling for the Hispanic name, but it is sometimes pronounced George, and that is certainly how we're hearing it pronounced now, as George. And happening actually right now is a song. They're playing Officer Down, which is a song that, Tony, as you mentioned, was this is traditionally played at officer funerals.
Indeed, and we are also expected to hear soon from some of Officer Pastore's friends and colleagues from across the country. Actually, I think it's also just noteworthy that some of his colleagues from the Seminole Tribe Fire Rescue, that's in Hollywood, Florida, where he served for a decade as a firefighter and medic prior to moving to Austin.
And let's go back in and listen to the song again, Officer Down, and what's being shown at the service now, a slideshow of his life.
That I sleep in now, and badge number 457 is all over town, and people keep asking if there's anything they can do, but no one can give me back you. They call me on a cell phone telling me there's an officer down. Oh, And I talked to you, I begged you, but you didn't come back around. Oh, I kissed you goodbye 1,000 times, but never like I'm doing right now. Oh, with 21 shots going up, I wish you had more time with us, 'cause 33 years ain't enough for the officer down.
I'd like to invite up Felix Perez, Nicholas Garcia, Taylor Lane, and Mike Castillo, please, for your remarks.
It's an honor to stand here today before all of you and to be able to speak at the service of a man as great as the one we are celebrating today. George Pastore is one of the greatest people I've ever met in my life. Unfortunately, you're probably going to hear a lot of repeat things said today, but that's just because they're true. Every time you saw him, he always had a smile on his face. He'd walk into every room, he'd shake everyone's hand. He asked them how they were doing. And it wasn't fake, it was genuine. That's just who he was. I met him almost 5 years ago. It was day one of the police academy. And I just remember laughing because on his left hand, he had like one of those like silly tribal tattoos, like all across his hand. And I just thought it was kind of funny. But not too long after that, I quickly realized that there was just an aura around him. You couldn't really explain it, but you wanted to be around him. You wanted to be near him. He had this energy and just this vibrant personality about him. I couldn't, to this day, I couldn't understand it. I was around him, almost every day for the last 5 years, and people just gravitated towards him because that's just who he was. And little did I know that day, I'd meet one of my best friends and one of the greatest men I've ever met in my life. And George was incredibly motivated. He was dedicated. Took ownership of all the decisions he made in his life. He held himself and other people accountable. And he always pointed the thumb, he never pointed the finger. We went out to work like in the same areas of the city as Chief Robinson said. We worked Henry Patrol together. We worked downtown together. And we had the option of riding solo, but him and I, we rode together for hundreds of days. And there wasn't a day that went by that Pastore came to work, and as soon as he put his uniform on, it didn't matter what was going on outside of work, it didn't matter what was going on in his life, it didn't matter, nothing mattered, frankly. It was time to go to work, and it was that simple. He gave us, other police officers, EMS, fire, he gave us everything he had, and it wasn't fake. It was real. A lot of times you hear people use a quote and say, this person would give you the shirt off their back. George would do exactly that. but then he'd take you to go buy 5 more. And then at some point he'd find out who your family members were or someone, and he'd call them, and he'd find out what else you would need. And he'd make sure that that was taken care of so that you'd be okay, because that's who he was. He took care of everyone around him. If you needed anything, it didn't matter if he knew you or not. That was irrelevant to him. All that mattered to him was helping others and being in service of others. He was the hardest working and the most humble man in the room. And there's no one I trusted more than him. I would tell his wife, Kim, when we talk, I say, whenever I'm with him, there was never a worry in my heart. Whether we were clearing a house, making a traffic stop, I never have to worry if Pastore was going to be there or not. If you needed help, if you needed something, it didn't matter if you were on the other side of the city. He would always key up and be the first one on his way there. And that stayed consistent. That never changed. No matter how busy he was, no matter what went on, no matter what else was going on in the city, or even if he was in the middle of something, if you needed help, you can bank on Officer Pastore being there. To my friend George, I'm gonna miss seeing you every day. I'm gonna miss calling you and asking you for help with something, because I knew you could fix anything. Anything I needed, anything anyone needed, Pastore could fix it. I'm gonna miss being in the same car as you, fighting about who's gonna drive today, arguing about what fragrance we were gonna spray the patrol cars with, because they smell bad. He liked the Mrs. Myers ones. Or Mr. Meyer, I don't know. I'm gonna miss arguing about if we're gonna get Tyson's tacos. Crunchy tacos were his favorite. Listening to Chris Stapleton in the car together. Picking out matching tag t-shirts so we could wear them to training together. And I can go on and on. I've been a police officer for almost 4 years. And about 99% of that time, he was right next to me. He left a hole that can never be filled. I'm grateful for every single moment that I had with him. There was nothing he couldn't do. He was the most inspirational, dedicated, and one of the most beautiful people I've ever met in my life. George, thank you for being you and never changing and never apologizing for who you were. Thank you for always giving us your time. Thank you for bringing us into your light. Thank you for spending hours and days trying to help others. Thank you for always being there for me. Pastore had a saying in the police academy, and he kept it going as once he graduated. He would say, find five, find five. At the end of every PT session, he would tell everyone, hey, find 5 people and tell them good job or give them some sort of encouraging message. And I'll end with this. Thank you for bringing us all together. To everyone at the Seminole Tribe Fire Rescue, thank you for being here. George, we're all here for you today. Your family, your brothers, your Seminole family. You left a forever imprint on our hearts. The world will never forget you, and we will make sure they never do. Your legacy will live on. Quite frankly, I don't know how yet, but we'll find a way. To my brother, the P to my P, the rock steady to my bebop, I love you, and I will never forget you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I stand before you today with a heart full of gratitude and admiration for the person who has profoundly shaped my journey. I've known George since I was about 4 years old. He paved the way and guided me onto the right track. I followed in his footsteps for as long as I can remember. From starting martial arts at a young age, to becoming an instructor in my teenage years, to graduating high school and joining the EMT program, and later following through to become a firefighter and paramedic. As I reflect on the milestones and challenges that we've navigated together, I'm overwhelmed with appreciation for the invaluable lessons learned and unwavering support given. George instilled in me honesty, integrity, respect, discipline, determination, and work ethic. These character traits have guided me throughout my entire life. He taught me to eliminate the word can't from my vocabulary. He taught me that giving up was never an option. He taught me that no matter how difficult the circumstances, with perseverance and a positive attitude, I can overcome anything. George taught me that my possibilities were endless. For those of you that knew him, you know that he wanted to be the best at everything that he did. Being the best isn't about competing with the person next to you. It's about competing with yourself and becoming better than you were the day before. George always told me, if you're gonna do something, do it with a purpose and give 110%. Having integrity is another one of the many things that sticks out to me. The dictionary definition of integrity is the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles. But George's definition is doing the right thing even when no one's watching. George lived with integrity 24/7. It didn't matter whether he was on shift or off shift, in uniform or out of uniform. He did things because he wanted to, not because he wanted something in return. George has been a role model and made a positive impact in hundreds, if not thousands of lives. He is loved and will be missed by many. To Mr. George, my mentor, my family, I wouldn't be the person I am today without you. You helped me find my passion and purpose, and for that, I couldn't be more grateful. Thank you.
So I'll apologize now that I'm horrible at this, but I want to thank everyone for allowing me this time to be here and to show that we are expressing our deepest sympathy with everyone in attendance today. Most important, Kim, you're as strong as they come. And George knew this, otherwise he wouldn't have taken a second look. Connor, Trevor, you have and always will be part of our family, and I want you to know Pastore absolutely loved you. Pastore, George, knew this, otherwise we would have never known because he doesn't keep anyone close that he doesn't share anything with. I also want to acknowledge Connor and all of Pastore's SWAT family. Connor, we are sending you love and prayers for a speedy recovery, brother. We pray for all of the family and friends we are all hurting in different ways, which Pastore would not be happy about. All this attention, he'd hate it. Inside, he's like, yeah, that's me. But outside, he wouldn't have liked it. We're all here, and we're all with you in this time of grief. For all of his red line and blue line family, we're here and need each other more than ever. Pastore was one of a kind, selfless, hard-headed, and amazing man. There is nothing we can do to make this easier, but we can honor him by coming together and constantly working together the way that he would want it. Pastore was a structured and very goofy individual who did not allow bad company to surround him. If any of you here are close with Pastore, you're very lucky, because he doesn't let anyone close if they didn't deserve it. Pastore was a pinnacle piece of our honor guard and our fire department. He helped start it. He has left an impact that can never be taken away. He was my lieutenant and a great mentor. As when I moved up and got promoted, he was always there for guidance. Pastore, you could tell that they always say you're a reflection of the company you keep, and it shows because he was amazing. And the people around him, amazing. I want to challenge everyone to be like Pastore and just bring a smile to someone's face and make it contagious. That's what he did. All he had to do was just show up and just that smile brighten the room. We will continue becoming closer and working together as a family like he always wanted. He was very big with camaraderie, and that shows as well. If anyone ever needs anything, myself and the Seminole Tribe Fire Rescue family, we're here. Little did Pastore know, he would continue bringing people closer, even during the worst of days. Kim, we love you, and we are here for you. The family, all the friends, you're not alone. Austin Police Department and Austin Fire, thank you so much for allowing us to participate and honor our brother. Whether you want to or not, we're one big family now. The hose draggers and the donut lovers, we're coming together. We're uniting as one. Pastore always fought for the camaraderie, and look at this. This is amazing. Thank you, everyone, for honoring Pastore as the hero, the badass SOB that he was, the friend, the brother, and all-around lovable human he was. Pastore, buddy, we love you, and we'll always have you with us. To the man with no chill but all thrill, till we meet again, rest easy, brother. See you in a bit. I love you, brother.
Wow. First off, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. This is unbelievable. This is unreal to see the amount of people out here. My name's Mike Castillo. I'm a good friend of Jorge's, also a member of the SWAT team. You can understand, I'm going to read my thoughts today just so I can make sure I portray him to the best of my ability. So here goes. Protect my brothers. Everyone goes home. This is the tattoo that Jorge proudly wore across his chest. I first met Jorge at one of the quarterly honor guard trainings. He showed up by invite because he was interested in joining the unit. Honor guard, as you know, is a secondary assignment outside of our normal duties. Jorge's primary assignment was the downtown area command with the George 400s. Seemed like a lot of the guys at that honor guard training had met him before, but I hadn't. I overheard some of the guys calling him George, other guys called him Jorge. Me being me, I walked right over to him. I just said, "So what do they call you?" He just smiled at me and said, "George, Jorge, it's just whatever. Either one works." I said, "Perfect, I'll call you Jorge." To this day, that's still how his contact shows up in my phone. I could tell right away he was disciplined and motivated to do things the right way. As our friendship grew, we often talked about how he wanted to get on the SWAT team. I asked him why he wanted to do this, and he shared with me how he had already worked almost a full career as a firefighter, but he felt he had another calling after seeing some of the horrors from mass casualty incidents. He told me he wanted to be up front with the guys, going in first, doing what he could to stop the killing. I'm going to share with y'all just a couple examples of the person that he truly was, the type of person he truly was. So there was one week where we worked a special contract assignment in suits. We drove the executives of BMW back and forth from the airport. We were making drops coming and going. At one of the venues, I was standing outside my car near the road when a sedan came flying down the street. I had to kind of jump out of the way. Car probably missed me by inches and kept heading down to the end of the street. Jorge pulled up right about that time, and I walked up to his window and I was like, "Bro, did you see that? The car almost hit me." The look on his face instantly changed. He grabbed my wrist and said, "Which one? What did he look like?" I pointed to the car, but I told him I was fine. He said, "No way, bro, I'll be right back." He ended up coming back a few minutes later, and I asked what happened. He told me he stopped the guy, identified himself as a police officer. He said he made sure it wouldn't happen again. He was the kind of guy that didn't let people wrong his buddies, and he believed in the brotherhood to his core. Those that knew him never had to question whether or not he was going to be there for you or have your back in times of crisis. Every time I called him, he answered on the first ring. Anytime I asked if he could cover my on-call so I could take my wife out, because she's always catching the brunt of our stressful job and the unanticipated times we're called on, he immediately said yes. I knew he hadn't checked his schedule or had a take-home car lined up, nothing. He just worked those things out behind the scenes so I didn't have to even think about it. The next day he would text me at 7 a.m. asking, "How did the date night go? I hope Val had a wonderful time." I signed up to work an overtime gig with his patrol shift downtown. I was super excited to get to work the street with Jorge and make a little extra money, spend time with him taking calls. The moment we went 41, he was ready to get to work. I told him, "Hey man, you know I'm on OT, right? Don't be getting all crazy." He just smiled at me with his typical, "Oh, we're getting into some stuff" grin. He pulled up the list of active warrants. I feel like we checked every corner and alley of the downtown area looking for felons. We pulled up to some of the locals who clearly knew him. And those people were pointing in all directions where they last saw his guy. I was so impressed by his passion for police work and his willingness to be proactive. He loved this work and no doubt made a significant impact on crime reduction in the downtown area. When that particular patrol shift we were working was coming to an end, he drove me back to my Tahoe so I could unload my gear. About that time, we heard over the radio that another officer was attempting to stop a vehicle who was believed to be driven by a man who had threatened to come back and shoot up a nightclub from an earlier call. The traffic stop was initiated and the car started to evade, refusing to pull over. Jorge looked over at me and I looked right back. He smiled, said, "You want to go?" I said, "No, but I know we're gonna." So we jumped back in the car as other officers activated a pursuit. We caught up to it pretty quickly with Jorge's, safe driving skills. We caught up to it pretty quickly. The two cops in front of us ended up crashing into each other because the suspect kept slamming on his brakes, speeding back up. Next thing I know, we're number one in the pursuit. I'm sitting in the front seat, holding Jorge's rifle in my hand, and he's just smiling like he's having the time of his life. We're chasing this guy. DPS is paralleling us. The pit car's coming up past us to attempt an approved pit maneuver. The car gets pitted right in the middle of 35, crashing into the guardrail, debris, glass flying everywhere. Next thing I know, we're out of the car giving commands. The suspect had exited the vehicle and was being non-compliant. We couldn't see his hands. Another officer ends up flanking the suspect and tasing him. Jorge and I moved up together, cleared the vehicles as the call came to an end. We get back in the car and we're heading back to the main. The dust had settled and Jorge just looks over at me with that grin and says, "Well, that was cool." I was like, bro, I was literally unloading to head home. What just happened? He said, police work, my friend. You know, if I'm being honest, I've been doing what I can to keep my mind busy this week with the funeral preparations and the fact that I had to talk in front of so many people. I've done my best to stay strong and keep it together, but it really hit me when I thought about the last time we were on an operation together, and one of the last things that he said to me in person. It was going to be a dangerous entry into a house on a call. Before he pushed out on that, he walked over, he hugged me like he always did, looked me in the eye, and he said, "See you on the other side, brother." So take time to let out your tears. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to show your emotions. Jorge gave his life so that others could succeed, and we're going to continue to hold the line and do what we need to do for each other, because that's what he would have done. He would want us to use today to share fellowship, laugh, joke, smile, enjoy each other's company. Today we honor him. Take a look around. Right now, do it. Look around. This is how many people he affected. He would have loved this, and I know he's watching. I challenge you to read the oath we took and remember why we chose this profession. Purpose. That's why. It was never about money, politics, image, or gear. It was about the people, the brotherhood, and the community. Wear your shields with pride and don't ever forget what it represents. Jorge was a police officer and he did his duty up until the last breath he took. Protect my brothers. Everyone goes home. Thank you.
I'd like to welcome up Rafael Rodriguez. Comments from the family.
My brother, my heart, my soul, you have filled me with your passion to serve, your passion to honor, your passion for sacrifice. Greater love hath no man than this, to lay down his life for a friend. A verse that many do not live to truly understand, and even less will ever experience. Those of us who had the pleasure of serving with George know that passion. He lived life at full speed and gave himself fully to everything he did. Failure was not an option. I have known George since I was a child. Little did I know that meeting him would change the trajectory of my entire life. But he was not just my friend. He was my brother. He was my mentor. I would not be the man I am today if it wasn't for him. He loved like no other, and our lives without him will forever leave a hole to be filled within our hearts. My brother was a hero, and his patriotism flowed throughout his body. He saved countless lives in many different ways, both in person and by proxy. He was an everlasting foundation for us, whose influence will expand to countless lives. The influence and passion he instilled in others will continue to change the world for generations to come. Kim, you were his soul. You were his everything. You were his rock and his foundation. You were the immovable object that was with him throughout his journey to change the world. You were the living embodiment of what many strive to emulate. For your love to each other was immeasurable, is immeasurable. Before I finish, I would like to read the words of Chief Tecumseh by which George lived since the day he entered this world to fulfill his purpose. So live your life that the fear of death can never enter your heart. Trouble no one about their religion. Respect others in their view and demand that they respect yours. Love your life, perfect your life, beautify all things in your life. Seek to make your life long and its purpose in the service of your people. When it comes your time to die, be not like those whose hearts are filled with the fear of death, so that when their time comes, they weep and pray for a little more time to live their lives over again in a different way. Sing your death song and die like a hero going home. Thank you.
First, on behalf of Kim and the Pastore family, thank you all for being here today. As has been said, human beings are communal creatures. More than you know, your presence here is a comfort to this family and brings great honor to our fallen brother. I also want to thank all of our speakers for sharing their thoughts about George and reminding us what a unique person and devoted public servant that he was. Unfortunately, we have been here way too often. Once again, we are reminded that life is a precious gift, made even more precious when it is ended all too soon. I won't take long. Others have spoken eloquently here. I won't belabor their points, but I do want to focus on three words that we've heard again and again and again this afternoon. Those three words are love, service, and heroism. You've heard it said that George loved being a police officer. Even beyond that, he found ways to use his life and his passion to help others. He gave his life in the many hours he spent shaping the lives of young people, teaching them martial arts, more importantly, teaching them life. He gave his life in the years he served as a firefighter and a paramedic, and then as a police officer. And in all of that, he acted out of love. The depth of grief and loss that is felt here today is directly proportional to the love that so many had for George. He put love into the world, and that made it easy to send love right back to him. Earlier this week, as Kim and I were visiting about the service, she referenced that love more powerfully than I ever could. Her exact words were, "We are more overwhelmed by the love than by the loss." The second word that comes to mind is service. George had a servant's heart. Some people are just hardwired that way. It is built into their DNA. That was George, and that's why we are here today to honor him for it. He went well above and beyond what you would call the normal call to duty for a police officer. He served on the SRT, the CAS team, the SWAT Gold team, and the APD Honor Guard, and each of those was a voluntary assignment. Why did he do all that? Because he loved serving others. And in a world where more and more people seem to be asking, what's in it for me? George selflessly and passionately served his community and served it well. As his obituary says, he helped make the citizens of this city safer and their lives better. But finally, there is the word heroism. That is a word I doubt seriously George would ever use to describe himself, but is a word that fits him nonetheless. The dictionary defines a hero as someone who is admired for his or her courage and brave deeds. A hero is someone who displays boldness and altruism. A hero is someone others regard as a role model or ideal. In every sense of that definition, George's life is heroic. He loved helping others and making their lives better. He served with honor and distinction, and he offered up the ultimate sacrifice, giving his life while trying to save others. He literally ran in while others ran out. Love, service, heroism. The longer you live on this planet, the more you realize life has its speed bumps. There are disappointments, there are hurts, there is the unexpected, there is pain, and there is suffering. But there are also some things that are a blessing. And when you've had the privilege of doing life together with someone like George Pastore, you know the blessing. Alfred Lord Tennyson wrote in his epic poem In Memoriam these words: I hold it true, whate'er befall, I feel it when I sorrow most. 'Tis better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all. We're reminded today that those we lose to death are still very much alive in the memories and the legacy that they leave in our hearts. So as we prepare to depart from this place, let us remember George, his love, his service, his heroism, and most importantly, let us follow in the footsteps of the legacy he has left.
appreciate those nights and those dreams. But my friend, I'd sacrifice all those nights if I could make the earth and my dreams the same. The only difference is to let love replace all I hate. So let's go there, let's make our escape. Come on, let's go there. Let's ask, can we stay? Can you take me higher to a place where line might see? Can you take me higher to a place with golden streams? So let's go there. Yeah, let's go there. Come on, let's go there. Let's ask, can we stay? Set up high, I'm strong enough to take these dreams and make them mine. Can you take me higher to a place where line might see? Can you take me higher to a place with golden streams? Can you take me higher to a place where blind men see? Can you take me higher to a place with golden streams?
As we bring this service to a close, I'm going to ask you all please to remain where you are as we render police honors by the APD Honor Guard team and pipe and drum band. As part of those honors, you'll hear a bugle playing taps, and I think the lyrics to that song are an appropriate benediction. It says, "Day is done, gone the sun, from the hills, from the lake, from the skies, all is well, safely rest. God is not."
Well, we are waiting for the honors to happen now, which is customary at the end of a police officer funeral.
Yeah, the playing of taps, also the bagpipes will play Amazing Grace, followed by a 21 gun salute, and then Ashley, an emotional moment with the calling of the 1042, the final call.
Let's listen in. This is certainly an emotional time for these men, the members of the Honor Guard, whom Officer Pastore served with.
Yeah, it's just such an emotional part of this day. Ashley, to think that he was part of this team that is performing this ritual on his behalf in his honor at this moment. When you think about that, it's just such an emotional part of this day's events.
One of the things they're doing now, preparing to fold and present that flag to his wife, Kim. And you can see the officers there in position for the 21 gun salute, which will also happen as part of these proceedings.
Such an honored tradition when a law enforcement officer loses his or her life in the line of duty. Again, Ashley, Officer Pastore, the first officer to die from a shooting in more than a decade. There are thousands of people and fellow officers out at the Circle of the Americas right now to watch this live with us here.
The camera is panning away now as we will hear taps.
Officers, order! Order! All read, rest!
We've been continuing our coverage of honoring senior police officer Jorge Pastore, a member of the Austin Police SWAT team who was killed early Saturday morning after responding to a call for help inside a home where what police describe as a domestic violence incident was playing out. We are now at the point of the service where Austin Police and the Honor Guard, of which Officer Pastore was a part, are performing the time-honored traditions of a police officer who dies in the line of duty.
We've heard the gun salute. We have heard taps being played. We watched as the Honor Guard folded that American flag that was draped over his casket for the entire service and then presented it to his wife, Kim, which was such an emotional, frankly, it was very hard to watch, Tony, to see her clutch that flag and hug the Chief Henderson. Let's listen into the final call.
And hold Officer George Pastore, Tac 66, 1042.
Officer Jorge George Pastore, badge number 9097, began his tour of duty on January 31st, 2020, and ended his tour of duty on November 11th, 2023, on the authority of Chief Robin J. Henderson of the Austin Police Department. Badge number 9097 is officially retired, and Officer Jorge George Pastore is 1042. Rest easy, Officer Pastore. We'll take it from here. Godspeed, brother.
We've been watching the funeral service for senior Austin police officer Jorge Pastore, who was killed in the line of duty on Saturday responding to a SWAT call.
Saturday morning around 4:45 in the morning, Ashley, we have been watching this service. It began a little after 11, around 11:30. There was a delay this morning. It appears to be wrapping up at this time with the crowd starting to disperse.
And we heard so much about a man who has truly lived a life of service, that after 10 years of serving as a firefighter and paramedic, Officer Pastore decided he wanted to be a police officer. He wanted to go, and join the SWAT team. And this was someone who served on the honor guard, served in the SWAT team. In this situation, Tony was the first SWAT member in.
Yeah, and this was in response to a phone call, a 911 call that authorities received in the early morning hours of Saturday. They responded and received information that a man armed with a gun was essentially holding his family hostage. One of the family members had been stabbed and was able to escape, but authorities on the scene and that SWAT team deemed it an emergency situation that required immediate entry to try to go inside that home. Police officers took fire, and Officer Pastore died a short time later. Ashley, as we have mentioned, a second officer also took gunfire and was shot and injured, but has since been released from the hospital. One of the things, Ashley, and there was so much that we learned about Officer Pastore, but I think one of the things that we were both touched by is just the tattoo that he had on his chest: "Protect my brothers, everyone goes home."
Yeah, something that we heard from both the mayor and one of the police officers who served on the honor guard with him, talking about just his commitment to his fellow officers, his commitment to make sure that everyone went home. And so sadly, he did not go home Saturday. He paid the ultimate sacrifice in order to keep our community, and in an effort to save those two people who were in that house, who tragically also lost their lives.
The gunman also was pronounced dead at the scene of that shooting Saturday morning. But again, Ashley, as we have said multiple times, Officer Pastore, the first officer to lose his life from gunfire in Austin in more than a decade. This comes at a time of much difficulty for the Austin Police Department. Two other current and former officers also died unexpectedly last weekend, one of them dying in a traffic collision in Williamson County. Had only recently retired from the department in recent months. So again, this coming at a time of real grief and sadness within the ranks of APD. But again, Officer Pastore making the ultimate sacrifice, which is why he has been so honored today by thousands of people out at the Circuit of Americas, people, fellow officers from across the state, across the nation, joining Austinites and honoring him today.
And members of his former firefighter unit, the Seminole Tribe Fire and Rescue from Florida, members coming down. And we learned so much about Officer Pastore, just about his love for life and his love for people. One of his close friends, who is also on the police department, saying he's not the kind of guy, he would give you the shirt off his back, but then he'd go and buy you 5 more shirts, is what he said about him. And the love that he and his wife Kim had for the community, the fact that, Officer Pastore learned martial arts, started teaching at the age of 16, and then him and his wife opening a martial arts studio in Central Texas for children. You can see there people exiting Circuit of the Americas, exiting the service. But such an amazing life.
And Ashley, we could go on and on about all of his accolades and contributions, but I think one of the things that really landed with me is he literally has saved lives. He has got a list of lives he has saved as a paramedic, as a first responder in Florida before, again, fulfilling his dream to become a SWAT officer, moving to Austin and joining the Austin Police Department as a cadet in 2019, and then formally as an officer in January of 2020.
And even in his tragic death, Tony, his other officers did get to go home.
Absolutely.
You know,
yeah.
and so certainly we're going to continue to have much more coverage of his services and his funeral, as well as a life well lived of senior Austin police officer Jorge Pastore, killed at the age of 38. We'll have much more coverage on him tonight on KVUE News at 5, 6, and 10, as well as online.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we will now return you to regularly scheduled programming.
Kevin and Laura are back in town, but yes, in a perfect world, Spencer would not share a home with Esme and Ace.
Why is that?
Because Spencer is Ace's brother. He's not his dad.
You know, I spoke with Laura when she got back from Europe, and